7th meetings. Any questions on those? Seeing none, Representative Roth moves. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mosier to approve the minutes of March 6th and March 7th. Now any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Minutes are approved. We will open the hearing on Senate Bill 417. And with that, we will ask Kyle Hamilton to give us an overview of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First, just going to give a very quick summary background of eminent domain, where that authority comes from before diving into the bill. Starts with the U.S. Constitution. The Fifth Amendment states that nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That amendment applies to the states through the 14th Amendment. And then in my brief, I've included a link to an AG opinion that has some interesting quotes from the Supreme Court about that power. Just one of them, eminent domain is the right to take private property for public use without the owner's consent upon payment of just compensation. The right is an inherent power of the sovereignty, and it comes into being with the establishment of government and continues as long as the government endures. But its exercise may be limited by the Constitution. Except so limited, it may be exercised for any public purpose designated by the legislature and in the manner it prescribes. It goes on to say it rests with the legislature to determine the power of eminent domain, when the power may be exercised, and the character, method, and extent of such exercise. The power of eminent domain may only be exercised by virtue of a legislative enactment. And you'll notice when you're looking at Senate Bill 417 that the font looks a little unique. All of it is in this bold ital. And if you've read the subnote, you'll know why. But when the bill was originally introduced, it was very short, just a couple of lines, simply repealing the statute that gave the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks eminent domain authority. But then the Senate Committee on Agriculture, through its committee process, went back and reinstated that statute and then just made some amendments to it. The Senate Committee of the Whole made some additional amendments. So that's why, by default, it's all in this format showing that it's here because of action by the Senate Committee. All right, so Section 1 of the bill, again, it amends a statute that concerns the exercise of the right of eminent domain by the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks. Under current law, the Secretary may exercise the right of eminent domain for the purpose of acquiring lands, water, and water rights as necessary to accomplish the goals that are listed in paragraphs 1 and 2. The bill would strike the words water and water rights from that list. Paragraph A2 would strike the words add to and waters. Under current law, subsection B states that taking, using, and appropriating property as authorized by subsection A2 is declared a public use. And again, for eminent domain, the taking has to be predicated on it, that taking being used for a public use for just compensation. But the bill would replace such language to state that taking, using, and appropriating property for the purpose of access to resources or land already owned by the department would be declared a public use. Under current law, subsection C states that upon request of the Secretary, the Attorney General shall proceed to acquire by condemnation all lands or rights therein or thereon, and all water or water rights required by the department. The bill would amend this language to replace shall with may, and then again, it would strike the language in all water or water rights. Senate Bill 417 would become effective upon publication in the Kansas Register. With that, I'd be happy to answer any preliminary questions.
Questions for Mr. Hamilton? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any more specific examples of how eminent domain is currently used by this department?
I don't have any examples off the top of my head. This is the only statutory provision that I could find from a quick search that gives the Secretary that authority.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now start with proponents. And first up is Senator Mark Steffen. Dr. Steffen, welcome to committee.
Thank you very much. Senator Mark Steffen, District 34. Appreciate you allowing me to be here. Esteemed representatives, two comments about eminent domain came to my mind as our reviser gave us a nice refresher in regards to such. It's only by legislative authority that these folks can have it, so it's us giving it to them. Secondly, John Adams said it very nicely back in 1790 when he said, "Property must be secured or liberty cannot exist." So keep those two thoughts in mind as we talk about eminent domain today. Again, I think on the heading on this bill for today's meeting, it talked about eliminating eminent domain. And certainly when I submitted the original bill, it did. It just eliminated this entire statute. The committee chose to limit the Secretary's authority for eminent domain. And points I'd like to make real quick is this statute is basically 100 years old. So this was written in a very different time. Frankly, in my opinion, the statute was never a good idea to create eminent domain in such a broad stroke, where it's basically obviously recreational. It pertained to water rights. It pertained to view sheds. It pertained to all sorts of things that we really don't look as appropriate uses of eminent domain today. And it's just we're at a point in society that we just can't use eminent domain in a whimsical fashion. The other really key part of this bill you all need to keep in mind was the statute as it is now gave the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks the ability to force the Attorney General to pursue eminent domain, which means, when you analyze that, means an appointed bureaucrat telling an elected official what they have to do. And that's a very problematic situation. So, in short, this bill just trims the use of eminent domain to a more functional status, though still far beyond what I'm comfortable with. But it severs that tie, that chain between an appointed bureaucrat and an elected official. And I think that's incredibly important that we address that while it's what's on our minds today. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I hope you'll support the bill. Thank you.
Questions for Senator Steffen? Representative Schlangenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for your presentation. Give me some examples, if you would, please, of whimsical eminent domain.
Well, and that opens up the opportunity to be by my definition, and that would be recreational. And that would certainly be the taking of somebody's land to improve your view shed from land that you own existingly. Those are the two ones that pop to my mind.
Is that a frequent occurrence in the last 5, 10,
We're
15
sure
years?
not, and we sure don't want it to be.
So no.
Correct. No, it has not, fortunately. This would have been changed a long time ago, I suspect.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just noticed that with the Senate bill, even with this modified bill, that it only passed 25 to 14 in the Senate. And so my question is just, what was the opponent's argument or opposition to the bill, and then how would you go about refuting their arguments or opposition to the bill?
That's a great question, and I'm hesitant to speak for my colleagues. It did, and I don't ever see these agency issues as being partisan, but they frequently turn out that way. And I think as you look at the vote, you'll see that it did break on partisan lines. I think decoupling the Attorney General and the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks is a good move, no matter who's in either position, whatever political party they represent. It's just good business. There was a lot of discussion of just preserving the ability of the secretary to do kind of whatever they wanted, and it really wasn't particularly compelling debate.
Representative Roth?
I want to make sure I understand. It strips out the water and water rights issues?
It does, and when you think of that, it makes perfect sense. 'Cause when you take somebody's land, the surface, that's one thing, but the way water rights work in the state of Kansas, they're pooled over a large geographical area, and you can't just take somebody's water rights right out from underneath their property unless it's been allocated, and man, that's a whole new can of worms if they've been allocated water rights.
Well, the reason my question was, a few years ago, there was discussion of eminent domain in our county to build a big lake. And it would have taken a large number of farmers' lands and ranch lands that have been in families for years and years and years, and they could have used eminent domain to come in and build this big lake. So that's the point of my question. I wanted to make sure I understood it stripped out water. And
Well, right. But Senator, what this bill, though, really hones in simply is with the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks. Other eminent domain, this is not a broad-ranging eminent domain bill. It's simply what the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks now cannot do if this passes, correct? Very narrowly.
I think that's a very fair way to state it, yes.
So if there's other, like what you were saying, yours was probably a little different, unless it was going to be a state park for some reason, that he would have that. Okay. I just want to make sure we have that full understanding. So Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for your presentation. How many cases of eminent domain has the Wildlife and Parks used?
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that. I know Secretary Lovelace was here and testified to the Senate committee, and that came up, and it's been very minimal. It has not occurred very frequently since the inception of the agency.
I believe about 2, and yeah, it was 100 years ago. Our Constitution's a little older than that, so old documents don't need to be renovated. And the reason the water rights issue was back in the old fish days when the important thing for Kansas was to have a fisheries. And so in order to have a fisheries and fish hatcheries, which that's how it started, that's the reason why the facilities out at Pratt, basically they had to have the water rights to do that. So this has not been done very often. There's already a 160-acre restriction that the Wildlife and Parks cannot buy land anyhow without legislative approval. So we're beating a dead horse in a way, although I'm going to, being a past historian and knowing what has gone on, I will probably still support it because a lot of times you need that eminent domain power to round out an access issue, a public access to a park or something. So, and we still have it. All that has to happen is the Attorney General has to agree to it. And I don't have an opposition to necessarily being elected, but this is not the big problem that we're thinking about and talking about. This isn't 30-30. And so, you know, I take a little bit of an exception, I guess, with that. And like I say, I'm going to vote for it and support it because basically, had your bill originally, I wouldn't have voted for it. But now that it's been massaged in committee action, I will support it. But it isn't as much of a problem as we're trying to portray here. And there is some value, even though I'm against, for the most part, eminent domain. There are times, I travel on a road coming up here that was some cases taken by eminent domain. And if I'd have been the landowner, I'd have been just as mad as anybody because I lost my family farm. I dealt with that when I managed Elk City Reservoir, when the Corps of Engineers come in and took lands from farmers to build a reservoir that's huge. And they lost their land. However, they was well paid for it. And it's just like KDOT. When they come in and do a road, they'll pay $8,000 for a rusty old corral that probably wasn't worth $500. So there's payment for a lot of that stuff. even though I know it hurts people. It hurts family farmers. It would hurt me if I lost my land to eminent domain. But that's somewhat the society we live in. So that's my soapbox. I apologize for going overboard, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, make sure we're on the right path. We were broadening our eminent domain discussion, so that's fine. So that's fine. Representative Carlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative just kind of enlightened me a little bit, but my question, I'll just ask it just in case it's different. What is the role of the Attorney General in eminent domain at this time?
Well, I'm certainly not the foremost legal authority in the state of Kansas. That would be the AG. But it's pretty clear to me that he's the one who has to do all the legal maneuvering to take the land away from the previous owner. You know, that's a very legally steep process.
Thank you. So this bill changes that by not giving the secretary the right to order him, you said,
Yeah.
to pursue that, but it would be requesting, but.
Exactly.
So
It would
it's
turn
still
it
in
into-
here. That
it-
didn't get taken out. I'm trying to catch up here.
Here, let's look at that exactly.
Kyle, do you know where that is?
But it changed it from a shall to a may.
Bottom of page
The Attorney
1, line
General
32.
may proceed by proper action to acquire
Line of what?
condemnation of land. So, yeah, it becomes a check and balance. That's the way I see it. I don't see it any
It's a
more than a
legal-
check and balance.
It's a legal responsibility of the Attorney General, I think is what we're hearing. Is that correct?
Right. Kyle, would you, because I'm
Yeah.
afraid we're parsing this a different way than it needs to be parsed. I think the way I understand this bill, it's simply a matter of taking eminent domain authority away from the secretary. Nothing else changes with eminent domain in the state of Kansas, correct?
That is correct. There are other statutes and law for cities, county commissions, irrigation districts, et cetera, that give those authorities eminent domain power. This is not going to affect them. Regarding the Attorney General, like the senator stated, changing shall to may, I'm not very familiar with the current process for most departments, if they all usually rely on the Attorney General. Nothing in here prohibits the department from using its own legal counsel
Okay.
to utilize, to go through eminent domain, but I would assume that they typically would use the AG for that purpose.
Okay. Representative Mosher? I'm sorry.
I'm not
Go
quite
ahead.
finished. Sorry. I guess I'm confused because I thought I heard Representative say he would support it because we need eminent domain to round out things, but you're saying it takes it away.
Yeah, no, let's.
I'm getting very confused.
Okay,
Sorry.
hang
And
on.
hang on.
Hang on. Okay. I think what Representative Blex was saying, and I guess as the chair, I'll use the big chair. Senator Blex was talking about a number of different things. What he said was that there's still a means if you need to use eminent domain to be able to get into an access road or something that's not there. It's a very small partial, but we're not taking that away. What this bill is doing is taking away the authority of the secretary and appointed secretary of wildlife and parks to go out and use their purview to get up to 160 acres of eminent domain to secure whatever that is, a body of water, a piece of land, for whatever. This bill is taking that authority away, that if eminent domain, the department would use either the Attorney General or through the statutes of eminent domain within the state of Kansas. Okay?
Is it okay if I ask you a question?
If you want to ask me a question, that's fine.
No, I'm just saying, so you're saying it takes away his authority to use eminent domain for the 160?
It takes,
Okay.
what I understand,
Okay, it's
again,
not what I read.
Senator, the idea in this is that this bill is very narrow. It just takes away the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks they now currently have the power of eminent domain if they choose to use it. This would take that away. So the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks should not unilaterally utilize eminent domain.
At all.
And if I may.
No?
Well,
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think when you threw in the word unilaterally, I think that made your statement correct. It trims the Secretary's ability to use eminent domain. It you know, a big old piece of pie, and it kind of trims it down some. And then then it is no longer unilateral decision making, exactly like you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Hamilton, if I want to make sure, then, because I don't want to steer us down the wrong road. So what am I missing then?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So your summary was accurate to the version of the bill that was originally introduced, where it just repealed that eminent domain power. But as amended by the Senate committee and the committee of the whole, it just limits the Secretary's current power. So they could no longer use eminent domain to acquire water and water rights. That's crossed out in line 13. And they also couldn't acquire lands as indicated on line 17, to add to state parks, state lakes, recreational areas, but they could still utilize eminent domain to acquire lands to protect and improve state parks, et cetera, et cetera. And then we discussed the shall to may change with the Secretary of State further down.
Okay, Representative Carlin, one more.
Thank you for, I think, clearing that up for me. The other question I have is, what is the cost? I mean, how do we pay for eminent domain when we take a little bit? How's that settled in this? And is that being affected by this bill at all? I don't think it is. I don't think you talk about the value of the land or any of that, but, well, no.
I don't know if anybody knows that it would be whatever the normal procedure is, or Representative Jacobs, the shell answer man.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that on line 12, KSA 26-501, I think that brings up the statute of that on acquiring land. I think that shows us the authority in that statute.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. And I actually
The
had it
normal
right
appraisal
here.
process, then what the value of the land would be. Before we go, okay, Representative
So
Black's
they
right.
would be paid by the normal statute. Okay,
The
go
normal
ahead.
procedure, right?
I'm sorry for giving history lessons. It adds confusion, but basically, if an eminent domain comes in, they get three appraisals, and they will take three independent appraisers and determine the value of the land, and then they'll present that to the landowner. And this is a hostile takeover. This is not a voluntary willing seller. Normally, I don't know, like I say, there may have been 2 cases where eminent domain was come in a long time ago. Everything they do and has done in the last 50, 75 years has been a voluntary seller. And so we have to pay appraised price. They cannot pay any more than 10% of the appraised price without approval. So it's basically 3 appraisers. They settle on that, and then if the landowner accepts it, then that's fine and good. If he doesn't accept it, it goes to court, and then they deal with it. Thank you.
In general, okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Kyle, the statement on our little daily agenda here, the first word is removing the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks Authority. Should that be limiting with the changes from the Senate?
Throughout the legislative process, when a bill is initially introduced, we always generate a short title for it to help everyone out so they can just see at a quick glance what the bill does. Through the process, when bills are amended, something we're supposed to do is quickly after an amendment, update that short title so that it clearly reflects those changes. That short title has not been updated yet.
So it should say limited.
Yeah, so it should say limited. Yeah, that's the short title for the original bill.
Representative Minix, thank you, Senator, for sticking around, but we just hang on here. We want to make sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to applaud you for taking the water and water rights out of this. I could foresee in the future sometime that we have an extreme drought and the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks wants to bring some irrigation water in. I think that should be a private negotiation without the threat of the government eminent domain on those rights to, if they need that for their fisheries at Pratt or wherever it is. So I applaud this. Thank you very much.
Other questions for Senator Steffens? Senator, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right. Lots of questions. So much for an easy bill. Up next is Desiree Petra. There it is. Thank you for coming in and testifying. Welcome to committee.
Thank you for letting me
You pull the mic down. There you go.
Is that enough?
Is it turned on?
No, it's not on. Is it working now?
And pull it down a little more. We can't.
I'm
All the ships at sea, you know, to yell loud, but we have some folks online. Yes, go ahead.
Is it working now?
Okay.
I wish this bill could be amended back to include property rights themselves. When I was listening to the meeting of what the Wildlife and Parks presented to the Ag Committee, I was kind of astounded. What they were saying, they are talking about the Flint Hills trails that are proposed. I don't know whether any of you are aware of that, but there are maps out there online that have these already drawn up. And I don't know whether, you know, I think property rights, there needs to be some restrictions on that. If they want to propose a park or anything like that, shouldn't they have to come to a legislative body to get that approved and not just go through eminent domain and take the property? That's what I'm not familiar with all the legal aspects behind it. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. And there's one other thing when you talked about appraisals. I have taken all the courses for appraisals. I never was licensed, but they get 3 appraisals. Okay, who is requesting those? It depends on who is wanting those. You know, they can be high, low, mid-range. The comps vary so much that appraisers use. You know, I've seen eminent domain go bad. I've seen it happen at Junction City with the school. So that's why I think there needs to be some control over property rights also, not just water rights. No government agency should have the power to be able to use eminent domain. We can't vote them in and out of office. You know, they need to answer, you know, to us, just like you do. So that's why I'm standing for that firmly. And the other thing with the wildlife, I don't know whether you watched it, I put it in my testimony. On these trails in Kansas, when they proposed this, they are wanting $6 million for these trails. $3 million will come from grants. $3 million is proposed to come from the Federal Highway Planning and Construction Fund. And I'm thinking, is this our fuel tax dollars going for this? I'm sorry, we can't afford our property taxes now. And, you know, if they want to expand, how do we maintain all this? It's impossible. And I don't think there is any other motive for this other than trying to take property. It was mentioned in the State of the Union address. They want to confiscate 30% of the property by 2030, 50% by 2050. And it's, if you take the property rights from us, we lose all our freedoms. We have no liberty. So that's why I stand against that. It's a mess. And when I saw them, you know, justifying why property rights should not be included in being withdrawn from the Wildlife and Parks Authority, they say, well, how long has it been used? Has it ever been used? It doesn't have to be used. If that is in there and they can do that, how does a normal taxpayer fight that? All we can do is settle for that appraised value on that property and take it. I hate to see the Flint Hills destroyed by that. You know, what's going to keep them from using eminent domain to establish these trails? So that's where I stand on this. Oops, it went off. Sorry.
Start again, sorry, no, I'm done.
Where, no. I've had enough of that. It makes me angry. Makes my blood pressure go up. But that's about all I have to say on that, and I just want, I'm speaking from the heart. We have ties to the land. I'm sure you do, you mentioned it, Representative Blex. And those ties are strong, and that's what builds a strong America.
Sure.
So that's all I have to say.
I apologize to those online. We thought the microphone was on, and so she had nothing but great things to say about the chairman if you missed that part. So where are you from?
I am from over by the Junction City area.
Okay, okay. Does this proposed, because it sounds like that your focus is on the Flint Hills Trail, is that correct?
And not only that, because I've seen it where we came from. We're originally from Southwest Nebraska. I've seen eminent domain play out, and it's never turned out good. Somebody is always hurt, and in most cases, the monetary reward is not, it's not, a lot of times, not even market value. So.
Okay. This bill is, what is remaining in this bill prohibits the Secretary from acquiring water rights, removes water from the list of those natural resources, and removes water, and that's basically what it is. As far as, some of the other rights that the Secretary, I guess, has is still in there, so the way it was put back in. So you're right. Now, as you say, there's no state general fund money in this. It's either grants through whatever or through transportation. It's a federal deal. We don't have, any, of the deal as far as that goes, and what there is. I know they've had a lot of discussion, and it was in the Ag Budget Committee. Maybe somebody on that committee wants to talk about that. So anyway, other questions for Ms.
Petra.
Petra, there we go.
I married it.
Okay, well, can't you change your name to Smith or Jones? So, questions? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are you personally going to lose property?
No.
Okay.
I've seen other people, seen it happen to him. It's not good. Us ranch people out there, farmers and ranchers, we're tied to the land. We're better at maintaining the land than the government is, and I think, most people can see that. That's where our income is derived from. We depend on it. We have to take care of it. The government, whoever, they don't have to. And right now, it looks like the Wildlife and Parks Department, they're always looking for more tax dollars to take care of it. And you've got people out here, that are living the ranching and farming lifestyle, and they are maintaining that property. So why change it?
Other questions, Representative Featherston?
Mr. Chair, I seem to recall previously when we had Wildlife and Parks budget things that they're self-supporting through their fee structure. So, okay, just confirming. Thank you.
Right. They're a fee-funded agency, but there are other.
Yes, there are other, from what I was reading on that presentation.
Through various different things through other funds, and they have not requested state general funds for some of these things, but even though they are a fee-funded agency, it goes through the process of the Ag and Natural Resources Budget Committee, and then also through the full appropriations. Their budget still has to be approved and so on. So, Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to soothe your thoughts a little bit. As I read through this bill, to me, it has nothing to do with water. That's been excluded entirely.
Yes.
It has entirely to do with the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks being able to do eminent domain on their own. It shifts, if they actually want to do it in the future, they have to go to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General may. And to me, this is basically taking property rights, your land, ranch, farm ground, away from the Secretary of Wildlife and Parks, and adds another obstacle, if you want to call it. So I think this bill is actually going the direction you want to?
Well, it doesn't specifically state property rights, it's only water rights. So how do we make water rights or property rights also come under that may instead of shall? I don't know.
Is my
How-
interpretation wrong? I'd refer to the revisor, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see if I'm up to speed with this current conversation. So the bill is, with regards to water, just striking that specific authority of the secretary to acquire water and water rights necessary to carry out the wildlife and parks laws of the state, and then retaining eminent domain powers over land for those purposes. That's it.
Unless they go to the Attorney General and the Attorney General may.
Under current law, it just states that the secretary can, upon the request of the secretary, the attorney general shall proceed with the condemnation proceedings. So yes, the bill would make that more discretionary on the attorney general's part. So the secretary could hypothetically decide, we want to proceed with eminent domain on this parcel of land, and then the attorney general could say, you know, in our judgment, we're not going to help you with that. And at that point, I'm not sure what would happen. Is the secretary going to be here in person?
No.
Okay, I was just going to say they might
Yeah.
be able to enlighten us on that, but
Okay.
Okay, I have a question, maybe kind of an answer to that. Why does the Wildlife and Parks even have this power anyway? Shouldn't this come down to cities, counties, and the state itself? You know, shouldn't the Wildlife Department, shouldn't they come to you as representatives and say, this is what I'm proposing, you know, and get approval? I have nothing against city, county power in doing that. It happens. That's just the way life is.
I'm not an expert, but the good senator said this bill originally came from probably soon after Teddy Roosevelt, long time ago. And when they were establishing national parks and stuff, and evidently the state of Kansas picked this up. But at this time, we're trying to strip that authority from wildlife and parks and allow the attorney general the ability may, and the attorney general has that authority on lots of other issues. We're not getting into that. This is strictly dealing with wildlife and parks, I believe. Am I close?
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Probst? Okay. Okay. Other questions? Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening.
Also, we have written only proponent Angel Cushing, and that should be in your file as well for today. And anyone else wishing to testify as a proponent? Seeing none. Anyone wanting to testify as an opponent? Seeing none. Written only as a neutral. Secretary Brad Lovelace, Wildlife and Parks, you can read his testimony on where he is on that. Anyone else wishing to testify as neutral? Last call for any questions. I see Senator just stepped out, but any other questions that the committee has regarding this bill? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 417. Okay, that is what we had on the agenda today. Executive decision, we will not be meeting tomorrow. The agenda was to possibly work on bills previously heard. We are not. So we will not meet tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday, or Monday. So with that, we will meet on Tuesday. We will have an update on 105. No, we will have an update on, yes, right to repair. Just an informational hearing on right to repair. Wednesday, we will have an update on K-State 105, and then plan on possibly action on bills previously heard, which, if you do the math, that's today. I think that's the one we have left for now. That is Wednesday of next week. Some will be out Tuesday. There's a big water meeting in Liberal, and others have other things to do. And so since we don't have a lot that came over from the Senate, we will do that. But don't get into a habit of not showing up at 3:30 since you have an extended, it's like a spring break in Ag Committee. So anything else for the yes, no, yeah, none for the rest of the week. So we will see you then Tuesday, next Tuesday. That's a week. That is a spring break. Anything else for the good of the cause? Seeing